Alrighty guys, we're going to go ahead and start these notes. We're going to be solving variable systems by using elimination, okay? So looking at this first one over here, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to ask ourselves, if I were to add these two equations together, would I be able to cancel out any of these variables? And the answer is yes. If I were to go ahead and add them together, just like down the road, just like we normally add when we put two numbers on top of each other, 3x plus a negative 3x, that's going to add up to 0. So that gets rid of my x values. But then I do 4y plus 2y. Well, 4 plus 2, that's going to be 6y. Now let's take a look at example 1. If we do example 1, we do negative 6 plus a positive 6. That's going to give us 0. Well, if you'll notice, we've eliminated the x value here. And now we just have to solve for y. Well, if I have 6y equals 0, the only thing left to do here is to divide. And so if I divide by 6 on both sides, well, 0 divided by 6, well, that's just y equals 0. Now, that's a piece of my answer. Now, what I have to do, very similarly to what we did in substitution, we have to plug this into one of the original equations, okay? Meaning one of these guys. We got to plug it into one of the originals. Now, it truly can be whichever one. I always say choose the nicer of the two. And honestly, they look about even. But let's go ahead and choose the first one. So if I have 3x plus 4, now we know what y is. We said y was 0 and equals negative 6, right? Now let's go ahead. Let's simplify. 4 times 0 is 0. And so we have 3x is equal to negative 6. Now all that's left to do is to divide by 3, and we get x is equal to negative 2. Now remember, these two pieces of information right here and right here, they come together to make a coordinate point. And that coordinate point is our answer, okay? So the answer to this one, or our solution, is going to be negative 2, comma 0. All right, so that would be our solution. All righty, let's go ahead and take a look at the second one, okay? Now I might have to go ahead and erase to get myself some room, so I'm going to probably have to erase this bit, but that's okay. Hopefully you guys still have it on the notes to give myself some space. All right, there we go. That'll work much better. Okay, so remember, first things first. If I were to add these two equations together, would I be able to cancel out anything? Oh, and I said the word that I don't like, right? What we're looking for is add up to 0. So looking at these right here, if I did 2x plus 6x, that would give me 8x, right? That would give me 8x. And if I did 3y plus 9y, that would give me 12y. And so it looks like none of the variables added up to 0. So in fact, we're going to have to make some adjustments, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask myself, what could I multiply this top equation up here? What could I multiply this top equation by so that way I could add it to the second one so it would add up to 0, or at least one of the variables? Well, I know that 3 times 2 is 6. I know that 3 times 3 is 9. I could multiply this by a negative 3 so that way I could go ahead and try to get rid of one of those variables. So let's go ahead and do it. So negative 3 times 2, that's negative 6x. Negative 3 times 3y is a negative 9y. And 3 times 5, that's going to give us negative 15. Now, let's try to add these two together. So if I do 6x plus a negative 6x, that's going to give me a 0. It's going to add to 0. And also, oddly enough, 9 plus a negative 9y will also add up to 0. And then we do 19 plus a negative 15. That gives me a positive 4. Now, what we're left with is 0 is equal to 4. Now, is that a true statement? And the answer is no. That is not a true statement. And so here, unfortunately, we are left with a no solution. All right, so that would be the answer to this one. We have no solution because that's not a true statement. 0 cannot also equal 4. It's not possible. Alrighty, let's go ahead and take a look at another example. All right, example number 3. Hopefully this is a little bit better example. Okay, so looking at this one, if I were to try to add these two together, 5 plus 3 gives me 8x. 4 plus 6 gives me a 10y. So unfortunately, nothing adds up to 0, so we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. Okay? What could I multiply the first equation by so that way it'll also be able to add up to cancel out, or I keep saying that word, add up to 0 for the bottom one? Well, what I could do is I could multiply this guy by, let's say, multiply him by a 3, multiply this bottom one by a 5. So that way I could try to get the 5 and the 3 to become a 15. So this top one, this will be a 15x. 3 times 4 would give me plus 12y. 3 times negative 14, that's going to give me 242, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, negative 42. And then this bottom one, now I need to make sure it's a negative 5, so that way it will be able to add up to 0. So negative 5 times 3x, that gives me negative 15x. Negative 5 times 6y, that's going to give me negative 30y. And then negative 5 times 6, that equals negative 30. All right, so now let's add these two together and see if anything adds up to 0. 15x plus a negative 15x adds up to 0, so that's good. That's what we wanted. 12y plus a negative 30y, that's going to give me, I believe, 18y. And then I have 42 and 30. And I believe this comes out to be negative 72. Alright, so now all we have to figure out is if these two we can divide. So we have 72 divided by 18. Comes out to a nice number, and we get y is equal to 4. Now, that's a piece of our answer. What we have to now do is plug this 4 into one of these equations over here, one of these. Now, it can be any which one we want, right? It doesn't have to be any particular one. But let's just choose the bottom one. So I have a 3x plus 6 times 4 equals 6. So let's do 6 times 4. That gives me 24 equals 6. Now what I have to do is I have to go ahead and subtract 24 to the other side. Okay, right here. That gives me, I think, 18. So I have 3x is equal to negative 18. And then I divide by 3, and I get x is equal to negative 6. So now these two pieces of information, okay, these bits right here. So we have our y value, and we have our x value. These guys come together to go ahead and create the solution, negative 6, 4. Okay, and that right there is our answer, okay? So boom, this one is right here. So what you have the ability to do now is you should be able to use either elimination or substitution. Both of them do the same properties and do the same thing, but sometimes one process might be a little bit better than the other. It just truly does depend on the equations that you're given and maybe just a preference. So we're going to be using this more on Friday when we do some Mad Libs, and that way you can have an opportunity to practice the one you prefer the most in preparation for the test. Alrighty guys, that'll be it for today. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Alrighty, have a good one.